So with all your experiences so far and knowing where you want to go, what does success look like for you?
I'm still figuring that out. I mean, as far as success, musically, I've achieved everything that I could have ever wished to achieve and more.
That's amazing.
Um, like I've been on I've been on big recordings. Um, I have I haven't toured with a band in a band, but I got to drive around the country in my car for 4.5 months. And I talked to my friend, my touring musician friends about that experience. Like I drove from Kenosha down to Oklahoma, over to LA, did NAMM, drove from LA up to Portland, stayed in Portland for a while, and then drove the northern states back home. And they're just like, wow, like that's exactly what we want tour to be, is like you can stop when and where you want to stop. You never have to load or unload gear if you don't want to. Yeah, you don't have to play the show. You just hang out. You just do the fun part.
Yeah.
And so I consider that time period of my life, that was my tour.
Okay.
And I built a name for myself without having to ever pick up and figure out how to do Nashville or how to do New York or how to do LA. And I'd like to think that that was my path was different. I don't know if it was more difficult or less difficult. I'd like to think it was probably a little more difficult, because I couldn't be in those places physically. But um, regardless, I'm happy to have achieved what I've achieved, and I think that is success in and of itself. And I think when I frame it like that now, then I'm able to then I'm just freaking cool with whatever else comes. Like anything else is just a cherry on top for me at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's amazing. And so early on as well, which is even more impressive. So
Well, what do you feel like we're the same age? Like, what do you feel like? I mean, do you feel like you've had success in your own career to which you can be happy with? Or what would you need out of your career moving forward to really feel, and how do you feel content with the work you've done?
ah, um it's like, first of all, I'm definitely grateful for a lot of things, and I appreciate where I'm at, but I like constantly want to strive for more. The biggest, like, the dream goal is to play on a massive stage in front of thousands. That's the dream. Um I only recently started becoming a recording drummer for some artists, like in the last 2 or 3 months. So that
Good.
was a big thing for me too. Is I wanted to get into the studio. Maybe that's why somehow the cover gig thing for me ended up just ending. Maybe it was to make room for that. Um, so I like to think that, yes, I'm now doing the recordings, but like I want to do a lot more. I want to play in a studio for other people. I want to work with bigger bands or bigger artists. So that's sort of like, they're my goals, but I do
Yeah.
appreciate that I have been given that opportunity to start being a recording drummer.
Yeah, this is the thing too, is once you start, it's only going to go up from there. You're going to learn more skills, you get more gear. I mean, it sounds like you're working in other studios, like not your own home.
Yeah, as you know, we just moved into our new place, but the plan is to build a studio in the backyard. Um, at the moment, yeah, like I'm just working in the either the artist's own studio or the producer for that artist's studio, which I'm fine with. Like, in both settings, I don't have to take my drums, so that's massive.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, but I would like to do the thing that you're doing where I can just work from home. I can record at my own pace and yeah.
There's a certain comfort with that, like just being able to, whether it's, the room you're in now or a shack out back, being able to have a space that's dedicated for that. I've been playing music in the space in which I'm playing music in this house now since I was 15 years old.
Wow.
And with a bands back then obviously, and now with just me now.
Mhm.
And there's something, special about having that really, really, really deep comfort level with the space.
Yeah.
And I think it changes the way that you approach drum set. But the other part of this too is like, you know, then if you're working with other producers, in their own spaces, is like, man, take advantage of that and just like, when the dude's miking up your kit, hey, what are you using? Why are you using that? When they're mixing, hey,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Why are you doing
Make
that?
some notes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, bring a notepad with or like your phone and just like hit voice memo and just put that freaking thing in his face, because like having this is like I got a few basics as a kid in how to record. I got more when I started working with the last artist that I played out with live. Um, but really it was a really rudimentary understanding of recording. And it was just through doing,
Yeah.
that I got a better ear, I gained more skills. We have to remember that, dude, we're in the age of YouTube because we're both old enough to remember when that wasn't even a thing. And with YouTube now, whatever software you're using, um, there is a tutorial on how to do anything and everything in that recording software for free on YouTube. So I think it's just remembering like, oh man, like I've got to figure out how to mix drums. All right. How to mix drums in Pro Tools or in Logic Pro X. Oh, here's 3 million videos on how to do it. And then you find, whatever it is, 3 to 5 channels where you connect with, that person and the way that they teach and their sounds, and then you take 5 or 10 things from each of those people, and now you have 50 new skills, in a month.
Yeah.
And that builds and builds and builds. And and now I'm at the point now where even though I still feel like I don't know what the heck I'm doing, I still, my sound attracts the attention of big artists, big drummers, big producers, even if for them to just reach out and say, hey, how the heck are you getting that sound? And then I tell them it's all out of, well, most of it's just a $100 ribbon mic that's way the heck out in front of the drum set.
Oh.
So, it's yeah, I guess it's just to say, to get back to what you're doing now, it's just like it's the same thing as Instagram or a podcast or anything else, is have patience, but the other half of it is take advantage you know of these resources around you. You're very fortunate to be able to work with, record producers where you can just walk into a studio and they're going to be like, all right, just sit down and play and we'll do the rest of it.
Yeah.
And with those people in that space, learn from the engineer, learn from the artist, how is that artist guiding this recording? I want you to do a little more of this, a little less of this. Why do you want that? What
Yeah.
are we trying to achieve here? And take that knowledge with you to the next session, take that knowledge to you as you're building your shack out back. And uh these are the skills. It's the soft skills as much as the, you know, little logic hotkeys, that you're gonna learn. These are the things that are gonna guide you forward and make you a hell of a strong little studio drummer over the next, few years.
Yeah. What advice would you give to someone like me or an aspiring young drummer who just wants to get in to the industry?
So my thing is, there's the old school approach of just moving to LA, Nashville, New York, and doing it.
Yeah.
Um, that's not financially feasible for everyone. And so I recommend doing the same thing I did. If you're outside of the major few music cities in the world, then you need to be on the internet, and you need to learn how to record yourself
Mhm.
and how to make that a video and how to optimize that once it gets onto a social media platform and how to optimize that platform for you. So that's the stuff I teach every day. And the other part of this is that you don't need a ton of money to start out. Some people feel like they need a ton of money. I had one student last summer, young man by the name of Colin, and he made me feel really old because he said he's been watching my videos since he was 13. Uh, so that was pretty weird, you know. It's like, oh
How
God, am
old
I
is
that
he
old?
now?
He's 18 now.
Okay. Yeah.
So he I think he might be turning 19 soon. So something like that. Anyways, so Colin uh he wanted to learn how to do recording, but you know, this is kid just getting out of high school heading into college. Um there's not a big budget there for doing this sort of thing.
Mhm.
And so I have a guide, like a buyer's guide that I send to my students who are trying to get into recording. And I choose stuff at every price point, you know, interfaces starting as cheap as $300 up to $3,000.
Wow.
Microphones starting at as cheap as $15 going up to hundreds or $1,000. And the benefit there is that wherever you're at money wise, you should be able to afford to start doing something.
Yeah.
And Colin bought a little interface that I recommended. I think he bought the Tascam 16X08, which is it's got 8 mic preamps on the front, and then it's got an additional 4 TRS inputs on the back, so you can throw 12 mics through it if you want.
Wow.
Um, and then he bought there's a brand Pyle Pyle here in the States, and they make a microphone that's like a 57 copy for 15 US dollars.
Wow.
Um,
Is it reliable?
it is.
Okay.
And I think it's just a Chinese 57 copy. I have a feeling because there were a bunch of fake Shure SM57s that were floating around for a while. And what I have a feeling what happened is that Pyle found the factory, and obviously they couldn't be putting the Shure name on them anymore. They got a cease and desist. But Pyle said, "Well, why can't we put our name on them?" And so that's what these are now.
Oh, okay.
And so Colin having a very, you know, just shoestring budget, I said, you know, I said, well, why can't you just put them on everything? So he put like this 57 copy on kick, snare, tom, overhead, and room, all the same little cheap 57s. And I was like, you know, it'll sound okay. I didn't expect anything crazy. And then I hear his drum tones, and I'm like, this sounds insane. This is so good. You know, $15 mics through a $300 interface. It's just stupid. It's so stupid, and it's amazing. You know, my theories work. So, you know, through his ventures, you know, this is a kid he's going to college. He wants to be a teacher, I think. And he's just pumping out so many drum cover videos, and this dude loves like old music. So like he posted like a James, I think it was a James Taylor cover a few weeks ago, and then James Taylor reposted him on his freaking
Oh, wow.
page. You know, so like, you know, Colin's goals aren't necessarily to be, you know, Russ Kunkel. It's not to be James Taylor's drummer, Steve Gadd. Um, but rather uh Colin is just doing this for fun because this is what he would be doing whether he was getting paid or not.
Okay.
And anything on top of that is a benefit, you know. So like if a famous person reposts him or posts his video in their story or DMs him or comments on something, that is just something cool that he's going to be able to tell his kids, you know, in 15, 20 years. And it's like the new school version of running into a celebrity in the world. But in the same way that, you know, his goals aren't necessarily what, you know, a semi-professional or professional drummer looking to do. Um, you can achieve professional, you know, work results with the same tools that Colin's using, with the same inexpensive tools that he's using. And then it's just a matter of slowly building a skill set, slowly building out that gear collection to reflect what you need. You know, not only do I have a pair of interfaces and a bunch of mics and a bunch of drums, I'm using a little webcam here. I got this little cheapy USB mic. I got a light back here so I look nice and pretty, so um yeah, it's slowly but surely you build this stuff out. And then when you have the equipment, it's not going anywhere. So
Yeah.
you have it, use it. Um yeah, I guess that's my tip to young people is just if you're not in a music city, it's not a problem. Just start doing something on socials. If you don't have an interface and you're like, I want to make videos, use your freaking phone. Like there's got to
Yeah.
be a way you can make a decent little video with your phone. Take some decent pics with your phone, and use your other skills too. Like you don't have to be. I think that's one of these things that chops drummers do a lot too. Is they just kind of become this one-dimensional thing on Instagram. And I say thing because it's like you lose some humanity through that.
Mm.
And that's the reason why I put comedy stuff on my page or the food reviews or silly drum videos as much as I do normal drum videos because it's not a complete picture, but it's a more well-rounded picture of who I am as a person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that better influences the type of people that are going to come and look at your stuff. Like John, the guy I was hanging out with a couple nights ago, John Wicks, huge coffee dude. He worked at the first Starbucks before they even had uniforms. Okay.
Oh wow.
So this dude's heavy into coffee. And so, like he's able to, talk about these sorts of things. And E-Man's a better example because E-Man really uses social media a lot. And very often, you'd see his drum stuff in his post feed, but then you go to his stories and it'd be like coffee shop reviews when he's on tour or like him cooking in his super fancy pizza oven when he's at home, and I'm like, yeah, dude, that's the content. I want the coffee and pizza content, because again, it's like everybody makes drum videos. I
Yeah.
I want to see the person who's not just, shredding chops or whatever. So be
Yeah.
yourself.
That's true. Yeah. I think everyone that it's like a bit of a competition on social media for any muso, but I only pay attention to drummers and it sort of, there's chops everywhere. A lot of the same stuff over and over like you were saying earlier. And it's nice to see the human element of it all.
100%.
With so we've just you've just given us your advice on like skill set. What about drumming specific? Is there a specific exercise or rudiment that you have gotten a lot from?
So as far as performance goes, um, I know that this is controversial, but I tend to agree with the sentiment that Jared Falk from Drumeo has that like you should focus more on your strengths than you do on your weaknesses. But I also feel that you need to have some sort of central basis in drumming education itself. Um, Now, do I know all the rudiments and how to play them? Heck no, I don't. Uh, the way that I always kind of built my drumming chops were through doing things stickings that felt good and natural to me. And I never really was able to define what that was. And I have this buddy, uh, Grimmy. His name's Grimmy, and Grimmy gives me a call one day, and he's really, really excited. He says, Tim, I figured out what you do. I was like, what do I do? He's like, it's all around the inverted paradiddle. I said, what the heck is an inverted paradiddle? So, that was the thing that worked out for me. It's not necessarily going to be the thing that works out for you or anybody else, but I'm not afraid to tell people, this is this is the thing that I do really well, you know. But the hard part is, well, obviously this is kind of like finding your passion in life. It's just as hard to find the thing that you're good at, that you're really good at once you find that passion. So, You find the passion that you're good at, and you're you're chugging along, and then you have to find your way to move that thing forward, that you're the freaking person, you're the dude who's just really good at that one thing. And for me, it was right, left, left, and right, left, right, left, left, and putting that into different combinations, combining it with death metal style chops that kind of morph into gospel style chops, and then I apply them in, whatever classic rock, indie, pop contexts where they don't belong naturally, but I find a way to make them, very organic. But I'm not afraid to tell people that because, and I think I talked about this in another podcast I was on recently, but basically it's just that never be worried about like giving up your secrets about the way that you perform if you're, on the level like us, because the other part that this, people lack is they haven't lived your life. They haven't, walked your same freaking path. So there's no way that they're going to perform the same way as you with those same things.
Yeah.
So again, focus on your strengths, share your secrets, and keep trying new things until you find the thing that's just like within drumming that just really feels good to you in your hands and in your feet.
That's great. And what about like, do you do well, first of all, have you ever had lessons yourself from another teacher?
I've had a handful of lessons. I did have a lesson with Matt Halpern from Periphery before they got real famous, so I like to say that. And
I was there from day one.
they played I think it's called the Annex in Madison, Wisconsin. And I went up there for a drum lesson. And I remember my buddy Tristan, who I worked with at the guitar shop, he played with like Oceano and Abigail Williams, which was a black metal band, and so he toured around with Periphery and stuff. So I'm in there taking a lesson from Matt, and Tristan's in there hanging out with Misha, and it's just like it was just, again, this is how small it was. This is just a bunch of bros hanging out and shooting the wind, shooting the breeze. So yeah, Matt was one. That was a fun one. I don't remember if I really took anything from it that really stuck with me, but it was just, I think more than anything, the experience itself was good, for
Yeah.
me. And I think what really stuck with me was so I quit playing death metal when I was 22, I think, 22, 23. And the reason why is because the last gig I played, uh, I played Fatback 3A Vaders, real big, real long stick.
Yeah, they're my favorite.
Oh, I loved them back then. And I used an Evans hybrid head on my snare. And I'm pretty sure I had die-cast hoops on that puppy. And I was one of the loudest drummers, and I was one of the fastest drummers. And so I'm blasting at like 200 to 240 BPM for 45 minutes using rim shots on the snare. And I had never experienced anything like this before or after, but after that gig for the next 3 days, every joint down every finger in both my hands was they were on fire for days. So I was so scared. I told the guys in the band, I said, I gotta figure this out. And so I left the band and I studied with Dave Bales, who's a professor or a teacher at the I think the Milwaukee Conservatory of Music or Wisconsin Conservatory of Music in Milwaukee. Paul Westfall, who's one of his proteges, who's another Milwaukee cat, and a few other folks on how to hold a stick and how to throw a stick. And I watched a bunch of DVDs too. Tommy Igoe's Great Hands for a Lifetime was a big one. And then I got some other wrist and sort of stretching exercises from Gene Hoglan's First Atomic Clock DVD. So pulling from all over the place, DVDs, lessons, YouTube, the whole bit. And those for me, and this is kind of why this goes back to the first question, is it's like those basics particularly the mechanics of drumming, are going to determine how long you can drum in your life without major health consequences.
Yeah.
Because I was mostly self-taught as a kid, so I think that's why I had those issues with my joints, why I'm still having issues with my shoulders now. Um, and all I can do is try to preserve what I have,
Yeah.
and I do my best, but what are you gonna do? Um, but yeah, that's really the extent of my drum lessons. One person, I'll tell you, one lesson that really did stick with me, and I like to shout him out every once in a while, is Jared Logan. So there was a big metalcore band called Misery Signals from the
Oh yeah.
Midwest here. Okay, so before Misery Signals, those guys had a band called Seven Angels, Seven Plagues. And Jared Logan was the drummer. And do you know that band?
No, I don't, but that's a cool name.
It is. Yeah, you got to look them up. They had a record called Jasmine's Lullaby, and so Jared's the drummer on that. And imagine like just an angry young tough kid beating the heck out of these drums and using gospel style chops and just like it's just amazing. Just his drumming is mind blowing on that record. Super ahead of its time. I still go back to that record. I'm just like, Jared, this is just amazing. But he lived in the town north of me here, in between Milwaukee and Kenosha, in Racine, Wisconsin. And I took a few lessons with him. Um, and like he's the guy who taught me. And I was playing hardcore and death metal, and he's like teaching me how to play a clave. And I'm like, what am I gonna do with this? But it's about the independence of it
Yeah.
all, and it's like those are the little things that I'm thinking like this has nothing to do with anything that I do in my life. That I think, along with learning how to hold a stick, how to throw a stick, these are the things that stick with you of the basics that then enable you to form your own voice and develop your own voice and perfect that voice in a way that feels good. Um, so yeah, that's why the basics are a necessity right there.
Yeah, definitely. So, so in terms of like a tangible exercise, would you say that the clave thing was sort of one of the biggest?
Early on, it was
Yeah.
big. The one that I always I got to pull up let me pull up the notes that I give to my students, and I'll pull something out of my butt here for you. So like, let's see here. A lot of times I talk about different grips with students. That's a big thing. Because I think we're at the age where a lot of the instructors that we would have worked with when we were young would be like, it's you're only going to use French grip, you're only going to use German grip.
Yeah.
And I advocate for using all three of them because they all have validity. Um, I'm a big guy I love molar, but I've kind of developed something I call the punk rock molar. So learning molar technique, I think, is really, really important, I think, for all drummers.
Mhm.
Um, but then like again, this is where it's like I don't necessarily like to talk about using a specific exercise for students because I want them to do things that feel good to them and that sound good to them.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's those couple stickings I talked about: right, left, left, right, left, right, left, left. And then and that kind of has some Motown roots in it. Um, like the kind of that boo do. So like, that kind of thing is a little flipped sticking of that. Um, and what do we have? I like doing things that kind of have fluidity between the two things. So like a Swiss Army triplet, and then this thing that's like a flam, right, left, left, kind of feels similar. Um, and then like Herta, I'm big on the Herta Bluzdas and Bluzda variants.
Mhm.
And so again, it just comes back to these are the sorts of things that feel good to me. That's what I'm gonna play. And when I have a
Yeah.
student too, then it's a matter of trying to figure out uh where can they pull their influence from, drumming wise, musically, and then what can we pull from that music that feels good to them in their hands. Um, because one thing I'll do with students, I just had a student the other day, and I sent him like 5 different, totally different records to listen to. And, like here's a death metal one, here's an indie album, here's a rock album, here's a hip hop album. And in the same way, I've worked with students where it's like, okay, what are you listening to? What do you love? What drummers do you love? And now let's try to figure out where are those commonalities between the things that you can play and that feel comfortable in your hands and the things that they play and things that you can hear are comfortable in their hands. And it's fine. It's difficult. It's a heck of an exercise.
Oh yeah.
But when you get through it, I mean, the reward is just powerful to that player for the rest of their career.
Man, like I just got to say that that is the first time I've heard, like, your approach is definitely unique. That is really cool. The way your philosophy on it.
Thank you. I
Uh,
appreciate that.
nah, no worries. Like I've never had a teacher that has put that angle onto me. Like it's always been, here's sheet music, play through all the exercises. The philosophical slash mental approach that I just learned from you and some other drummers on the podcast is like a way bigger lesson than just being given sheet music.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think what comes to my mind here is it's having that flexibility.
Yeah.
So much of this comes back to flexibility, right? And
Yep.
it's like if you're using a rigid teaching method, how are you you can't get through to every drummer with a rigid
That's
teaching
right.
method.
Yeah.
And when I was
Exactly.
young, I had a kid who we were working through groove essentials,
Oh yeah.
and he was enjoying it, but then you know he was like, man, I really love his thing was AC/DC. He loved AC/DC, and he was like, I couldn't have been older than 8 or 9 years old. So I'd be like, okay, if you can do this one next groove out of the Groove Essentials book, then we'll also work on the grooves out of Back in Black or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's so it's there's a balance, right? Because there's some of these basics you want to get into the repertoire, but there's also if the reason we play drums is because it's fun. The reason kids get into playing drums is because it's fun. And if there is no fun in the learning, well, they're not going to want to practice, and then they're not going to go anywhere. And then what the heck? What kind of service are you doing for that kid?
Yeah.
I had that problem when I was learning piano. Is my first teacher I really got along with. I was learning a lot through that dude. And then I remember we had to switch teachers, and man, I had no interest in working with the second teacher, and it just killed the whole freaking experience for me. So, I want to make sure in the work that I do that I personalize this stuff enough, have the flexibility with these students so that even though there's quite a bit of crossover from one student to the other because we're just playing drums, um, there's the I want to make sure that there's enough deeply personal stuff in there that it's going to put that drive in them, put that fire in them to keep going.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's so like, like going back to what I was saying earlier about how some drummer mates ask me about teaching just to make some money. Then you have yourself on the other end who's who's passionate about it and then teaching from such a cool angle. But cool is such a primitive word. Like
Pretty cool.
a unique angle. That's awesome.
I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
No worries.